It was a GameCube controller, okay? I know you wanted to know what I pulled out of the trash this time, and this time it was an honest-to-goodness GameCube controller. I'm serious when I said I found this in the trash, mainly because, you know, it sounds like there's, like, something rattling around loose in there, so I imagine they threw it away because some button broke or something like that. But, you know, I like projects. I fixed my PlayStation 2. I fixed my copy of Metroid Fusion. How hard could a controller be? Although, hilariously, one thing I did notice is it actually has, like, an inspection seal on one of the screws to prove that it hasn't been tampered with. So I wonder how many, what sorts of days this controller has seen. Hey everybody, this is Kodak here, and I'm taking a break from working on the current video. That is, I know I promised for months that I was going to make a video called Know Your Hook, but I have basically scrapped the script for that video and I'm rewriting it from the ground up to instead be about showmanship. And the reason I'm doing that is because the Know Your Hook video I wrote kind of fell into a lot of familiar traps that showmanship kind of helps you get out of, which is why I am basically doing it from the ground up. I think I've cooked up a pretty good one here. I'm going to be starting recording on that pretty soon, but I wanted to make a brief aside to talk a little bit about convention showmanship. Now, this past weekend at the Philadelphia Expo Center, we had too many games, which is one of a multitude of conventions that happen across the country. Now, too many games, it's more of a nerd and video game event. There's a lot of like fighting tournaments. It's one of the few opportunities to actually have like the multi-GameCube Mario Double Dash experience. But they do have a central room which is dedicated to board and card games, and that is where I spent most of the time. I managed to get a hookup for a staff badge from A Drive, who does Alistrol, so I did spend a decent amount of my time there filming B-roll for him to use for his own channel, which was, you know, a fun thing to do, you know, the basic, you know, quid pro quo of, you know, doing some press work. But it got me thinking about if you actually take your game to a convention, what matters. Now, I did a while back link people to a GDC talk about that very subject. However, it was specifically more about video games and stuff like that, but the presentation itself did feature a lot of good advice about, you know, getting people to your booth, getting people involved. A lot of that stuck with me, and I actually kind of want to go a bit more into detail about how to do that with games and things like that. So, the sorts of things you want to bring to a convention. The GDC talk talks a bit about it. It is a way for the audience to participate. It is a way to draw attention to your game, and it is a way to help things stick. So the thing about showing up at a convention is they usually provide space, maybe a couple of chairs, and a table for whatever booth you're setting up. And an important thing to do is set up and arrange your table in such a way to make it, you know, basically presentable. The saying in showmanship is, you know how to fake it. Knowing how to fake it is pretty important on getting a convincing convention booth set up as well. You have to figure out how to make your presentation, you know, polished and grand and appealing without, like, breaking the bank. You've probably spent a lot just to get that booth in the first place, so ways to, like, minimize those expenses or do things creatively on your own is a good way to do that. The way you do that is presence, participation, and it's gonna have to be giveaways because I can't think of a third P. The sorts of things that you should bring, a lot of people talk about you should have something that people can walk away with. And while flyers, you know, the sorts of things that are just printed on paper that you can just hand to somebody seem like the cheapest and easiest thing to do, flyers in this day and age are basically worthless. I mean, by all means, keep flyers around or like a sales sheet around if you're visited by like a game store or a distributor or a publisher or an investor or, you know, somebody who works on the business end of things. But handing a flyer to your typical layperson, that flyer is going to wind up in the first trash can they come across. So these things, they're a bit of a waste unless you have like one copy to show around. You're not going to get a lot by handing out flyers at conventions because when it comes to conventions, when people collect stuff, they only have, you know, so much stamina, so much arm strength. The sorts of things people are looking for that people will like take with them that will stick are things that are useful. So an idiom I have said over and over again is the best way to get people into your card game is to get your cards into their hands. It is why I talk about, you know, having a card to give away. It doesn't even need to be a fancy card. It doesn't need to be foil. You can take one of your cards, any one of your finished cards, and put, you know, the name of the convention on it, and just hand it out to people. They can be playing cards, you know, fairly easy to print. There are all sorts of really easy ways to print tchotchkes that are beyond just handout flyers. Like there's tons of companies that will do things like cards, like, you know, stickers, things like that. That's not a hard thing to do. There's actually a game I was consulting on my Patreon recently where the suggestion I gave was he has a system where character cards like level up, like they have their level up stats like on the card, but as they defeat enemies they gain like more and more awards which become ranks. And I'm like, dude, make those cards the things people get at the booth. You know, they play your demo and they earn like the awards, like, oh hey, I got a medal for completing the game. You know, that kind of fun little adventurous giveaway which adds the bonus effect of having it be something you earned. There are lots of places that'll produce knickknacks for cheap. Like I said, I already said stickers, but things like buttons aren't not that hard to produce either. Speaking of giveaways, there was actually a water bottle company there called Circle, spelled Cirkul, to maximize that potential here. Not a sponsor. They're like a company that makes like sport bottles that you can install flavor cartridges into. I personally find their you know, their methodology, the way they walk around, to be kind of cringe, but I'm just gonna say it. If you go to a convention that takes place in the summertime to hand out water bottles, that's not advertising, okay? That's a public service. So, okay, Circle, I like the cut of your jib. I was actually given a lot of weird things during my time there. Heck, even like, you know, like 3D printing these days. There was somebody who used like can't remember what it's called, but it's the one that uses the coil, uses the filament coil. I know that's a kind of like 3D printing, but they were printing out these little banana coins by using a 3D printer. And, you know, these are just, you know, tiny little tokens that can be used for games. They're actually like currency they can use in their game. I believe the game was called, yeah, Terrafyte, Terafyte, like bite. So they handed me these, which are kind of neat, and that's like a ton of advertising. That's hundreds, if not thousands, of cute little collectible things to advertise with for the cost of one roll of filament, which, you know, isn't that bad at all. It's not hard to generate like decent things to pass out to people. If you do an order of like 1,000 cards, that should be doable for like a penny per card if you know where to look. But there is one thing that you need to have on giveaways like this. The problem with these banana coins is that it's the same as the problem from this thing I got from a video game. So it looked like it was like a side-scrolling point-and-click adventure game with sort of an Adventure Time style to them. Like I got like some cards, which I believe are supposed to be shortcuts to button inputs, and a sticker of don't worry, blonde Marceline isn't real, she can't hurt you. But looking at the fronts and the backs of these, do you notice a little problem with these things I was handed? None of them have the name of the game on them. So here's the thing, if somebody comes home and they have, oh, what the heck is this thing? You know, they have like just a thing that's just a picture of something without any further information on it, they're going to forget where they got it from. So if you're going to do any kind of giveaway, it could be like a cool thing, but please, for the love of Pete, make sure that you have your name on it. Otherwise, people are going to forget what you are, forget where they spotted you. Like, I'm going to have to look this thing up using the map in the convention hall, and I'm just hoping that that makes do. So yes, a good giveaway is something that is useful, which, you know, is actually kind of fun to earn. Like I said, there was that game I was talking about that uses like a card with like 3 medals on it that you pull upwards as the character gets more and more rewards, and that has your name on it, so that when the event is over, people know where they got it from, and they have the name, and they can look it up, and figure out what they want to do. So, like I said, for a good giveaway, they don't have to be expensive, they just have to be useful and fun. Like, speaking of, like, you know, having cards that people can get by, you know, going around and exploring the booths, something I've posited before is the idea of actually having several cards that are acquired in different ways. Like, one of the things I remember from a convention back when I was still a teenager, and I'm in my late 30s now, back when I was a teenager and they were advertising the Bleach card game, you could get a variety of promo cards by doing different things. You could get one for, you know, showing up to the booth to demo. They'd often have like a little demo pack you could take. You'd get another one for completing the demo. I got a special Kisuke by defeating one of the game's designers with just a bunch of demo decks slammed together. That was an experience. And they had, like, I think a special, like, hero avatar card for, like, participating in a tournament. You know, it became an adventure. And if you can convince people that getting involved in your game to get the free stuff, if you can convince them that that's an adventure, here's the thing. Folks who love games, you know, nerds, stuff like that, folks who love that kind of stuff, they love quests. They love adventures. Give them a little adventure to earn a prize, like ask them to go somewhere to take a picture of something, or encourage them to show up for a tournament or a panel if you somehow manage to get on a panel, and they will do it kind of for the fun of it. Speaking of taking advantage of that motivation, one of the most brilliant marketing campaigns I have seen recently was from Altered. That is a game, it's the game that dethroned Ellestrol's as the most funded trading card game yet released. If I can get the camera to work for me here. Yeah. So what they did was they had this genius marketing campaign where they asked you to basically retweet the ad that they put up for these cards, and if you retweet the ad, you enter the contest. So what they were doing was they were having people advertise for them by having them spread the name and picture around to win a prize that cost pennies to make and can be shipped for the cost of a single postage stamp. Now, don't you want, like, tracking numbers and stuff like that for the prizes you give away? Not necessarily. You can do a little trick where you can just stuff a card in a top loader, tape over the top, wrap it in a thank you note, put it in a standard envelope, and put a regular old stamp on it, and the Postal Service will most of the time take it. And the kicker is, even if you have like a 75% rate of failure on delivery, which I don't think is going to happen, you are still saving money over sending this as a package. I should know, I just did that this morning. So we are talking like super efficient like campaign here for Altered, and I have to say that that was something that was really clever. Make it an adventure, make it a game, and people will cherish what you give them a whole lot more. But there are, of course, other things that you want to have around. Like I said, convention spaces, they usually provide fairly limited things. It is usually like a table, usually a 6x4, usually a 3x6 or 3x8 table, and a couple of folding chairs. That's usually all they give you. So what you want to do is you want to augment that with like a proper tablecloth. So you could do, most games I've seen do like a wraparound tablecloth that also wraps up the legs to make it look nice and clean. They will have like a banner hanging out the front, and you can get those kinds of banners at, you know, like office supply stores, like Staples and stuff like that will help you make banners like that. They might even do tablecloths too. Like, I've seen some pretty clever people who have it so that it's a table that has like the playmats printed directly onto them so that they could just set up the table and do the demos right away. You know, if you can have a demo table that sets up in 2 minutes, that is something that you could leverage practically anywhere. You could take that to game stores and stuff like that. That gives you something that looks nice and clean. A banner with your game's name on it that is very large is also pretty nice. Another popular thing are, I believe they are called stretch banners, or like Tensa banners or something like that. They're like sort of 6 foot by 2 foot, you know, big banners that actually like roll up and go on a stand or something like that. That was something that was brought up in GDC, but the way you want to do that is you want it to have presence. So you want to consider it basically being viewed from 6 feet up and 50 feet away. So what most banners do, the ones that are most effective, have the name of the game at the top so that you can read it past all the crowd, and they augment that with a very large picture that grabs attention from far away. So an example of how this works. So at PAX Unplugged last year, I met up with the folks at Solus Games. They are the makers of Pocket Paragons and Space Lions, both games which I still say are excellent and you can get. They've sponsored the channel a few times because I genuinely think their game is good. But immediately across from them was this freaking thing.
So many people, you know, how's this?
And while I know that this banner specifically takes advantage of sort of more, you know, primal urges, I guess you could say, it is, without a doubt, it has a ton of presence. It makes advantage of, you know, strong composition and color. It's also enormous. That picture is like 7 feet tall, and I have to say that the amount of presence that this sign had caused a lot of people to look at it instead of the Solus game booth. They were fighting an uphill battle the entire convention while competing with that thing, and that is the kind of thing that your game is going to be competing with. So you need to make sure that you have a strong presence in order to combat that. Another thing that acts as a good hook, and that's actually something I'm doing with the newer version of the video, is the old Know Your Hook video was actually pretty bad and trite. The new one actually talks about hook in the form of like a musical hook, like generating something about your game that causes people to turn their heads and listen. When it comes to that, these are things like, you know, having a setup that's kind of fun. Like one of the things I did at the Elestrals booth was I had it so that the plush characters they had would hold onto their own card. Some of them were actually surprisingly good at that. Like they have a little Zaptor Velociraptor that even if you pick up the plush can still hold onto the card, something that I've told A-Drive he should have as a selling point. But a lot of games will have like a statue of some kind, or like an oversized plush. If they had like a plush of one of those creatures that was large enough that it can be spotted from a mile away, something that's good for photo ops. That also includes things like cardboard standees, things like that, things that make for a good photo op that don't interfere with a booth. Those are also good ways to grab attention. It's ways for the booth to interact with people in ways that do not require constant supervision. Another game I talked about a while back at PAX Unplugged, called Fable's End, actually had this clever solution where they had what looked like a card binder sitting on a pedestal. Now the binder itself was like bolted directly to the pedestal, and the actual pages inside of this binder were not the actual cards, but they were instead pages printed to look like the cards inside of sleeves, which meant that people could open the binder and peruse and look at the different cards inside, but they were full of expendable paper, not actual cards, so they didn't really have to worry about people taking expensive souvenirs as they were going through it. It was something they could literally just set and forget. Like I said, if you want to have a strong presence at an event, you can't just roll up with, you know, a banner and a card to give away. You really do need to put in that extra bit of work. You really do want, you know, a setup that looks appealing. You know, a lot of people do stacks of boxes. You know, if you're feeling crazy, if you have multiple sets, try to do some pixel art of it. Something I had to do as a Pepsi representative a bunch was build like displays that were in the shape of like a football mascot or the American flag or something like that. That's not a hard thing to do. If you have boxes in like multiple colors, maybe starter decks or something like that, you could do that. You could set up other things. Like I said, things that draw attention and allow you to interact with the audience without necessarily requiring you to be there. Of course, you also want to have an easy way to show people how to play the game. You want to show them why your game is fun. That is absolutely going to be the focus of the Showmanship video, and I hope you look forward to it. I plan on trying to get it out within like maybe the next week or two. I have a lot of family coming in for the 4th of July week and weekend, so that might tie me up a bit, but I'm going to try to get that out as soon as I can. This is just more a status report to give to you guys as I work on that. So, oh, in other news, I have finally gotten myself a new P.O. box. So, I know there's a lot of people who like to send me game prototypes or random cards or other surprises. To do that, my new P.O. Box is P.O. Box 15023, Newark, Delaware, 19711. It's kind of funny and easy to remember that zip code. But yeah, that is my new P.O. Box if you wanted to send me something, because I have moved since I had that most recent P.O. Box. But that's all set up and ready to go. So yeah, another big thanks to my patrons who helped make this all possible. If you want to know, we have folks who do like play tests all the time. There's a lot of people. There's pretty much constant chatter about game design, people showing off their games. It's pretty consistent on my Patreon. If you want to check me out, you can get it for as little as $1 a month. A big thanks to all of the fans who helped out, particularly Gustavo Chapella, A Bit Nerd, Logan Walker, Danny Bound, Dumpless, Echo Echo, Esquirus, Ilfinity, John Dolan, Cyterra TCG, Universe of Legends, Vaughn, and Worms Codex for paying in at the $10 or higher level. $5 and above people are scrolling by right now, and you can join the Patreon and get Discord access for as little as $1 per month, where we are constantly having game tests and reviews.